Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers lost for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, falling to the falling to the Orlando Magic 119-118. My throat did not want me to get the score out there, but LA drops to 10-5 on the season. Their 6-game win streak is snapped, and this was a disappointing loss for the Lakers, as I'm sure you guys will be discussing in the chat tonight. This was a game that felt like they were in control of for most of the game. They had a slight lead. There were a couple of really good stretches from Orlando, but even late in this game, LA is continually up in the final few minutes and ultimately loses because of 4 missed free throws in the final 39 seconds, 3 from AD and 1 from LeBron. So LA has this. It was not a great game by the Lakers by any means. This was a tough matchup for them, given Orlando's size and athleticism and length. They are one of the biggest teams in the league. LA was without Rui Hachimura, Jackson Hayes. They're still without Jared Vanderbilt, Christian Wood. So a bit undersized in general compared to the Magic, especially on the perimeter, but certainly missed several of their key front court guys tonight. And you saw that in the rebounding. Orlando had 15 offensive rebounds, had a plus 12 rebounding advantage overall. But let's get into the 3 takeaways from tonight, and then I will get into your guys' questions. As always, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So my first takeaway is going to be missed opportunities. And this, to me, was a missed opportunity by the Lakers in terms of losing this game, but the several missed free throws down the stretch. So it wasn't just the 4 that they missed in the final 40 seconds. Austin Reeves missed a couple with just under 2 minutes left. So Lakers end up going 3 for 9 at the free throw line in the fourth quarter, and ultimately go 17 for 26 at the free throw line, just 65.4%. So they get the free throw advantage. They take 5 more free throws than the Magic, and they were able to get downhill. And like, for as much as there is to dissect and sort of address for the Lakers coming off of this loss, they shot 50.6% against the second best defense in the league. They made 13 threes. They shot 42% on threes. They got to the free throw line 26 times. They took care of the ball. They only had 10 turnovers. So while the rebounding margin, the second chance points, the points in the paint, and some of the shot making from the Magic, they had 15 threes themselves, shot 47%. Like, there were certainly things that went against the Lakers, but when it came down to it, they were in a prime position to win this game in a close manner, but still win the game and improve to 11-4. Stretch the win streak to 7 games, go into that Denver matchup on Saturday with some real momentum and confidence. And this would have been by far the best team that they've beaten during this stretch. The Magic are without Paolo Banchero, but they'd won 6 games entering last night's game against the Clippers. So they were also on the second night of a back-to-back in LA. We've seen teams really struggle on that second night of a back-to-back in LA, tend to go out that first night and then not necessarily play that well that second night. So, I mean, Franz Wagner, I don't know, I'm struggling to say his name, Wagner, had 37 points and 6 rebounds, 11 assists, hits the game-winning step-back 3 over Cam Reddish. I think Cam could have tried to force him into, it was a tough shot. Step back 3, it was a deep 3, but I think in that case you want to run them off the 3-point line, and he wasn't able to do that. There wasn't that much time left in Cam's defense, but and then the Lakers miss their final shot. AD misses a jumper, but I would say this is a missed opportunity because this is going to be, as I've discussed now, the last couple, the last show and the last stream, a really difficult stretch for the Lakers coming up. They got Denver Saturday, Phoenix Tuesday, San Antonio Wednesday in a back-to-back, and then OKC on Friday. The Phoenix and OKC games are both NBA Cup games. So this is a tough stretch for the Lakers coming out of a little bit of an easier stretch. And this was a winnable game. This was a game that they should have won. That there's really no other way to spin it or analyze it. This was a blown game. This was a missed opportunity. And in a Western Conference in which LeBron was talking about it after the game, you got 11 teams above 500 right now. Like, these types of losses could come back to haunt you. Now, of course, you can make that case with any loss, but this loss in particular, I think, given the context of everything, probably becomes. I mean, the Detroit loss was so bad for a variety of reasons, but this is arguably the worst loss of the season. I might contend it is the worst loss of the season because if they just make one of those free throws, if not two, if they go 5 for 9 instead of 3 for 9, they probably won this game. So I think this is probably the worst loss on the season. Would love to know what you guys think in the chat here. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a big missed opportunity for the Lakers, the type of game that could haunt them come April when every game is going to matter in the Western Conference. And this could be the difference between the 6 seed and the 7 seed, or the 4 seed and the 5 seed, or the 3 seed and the 4 seed, and potentially who they're matched up with in round 2. Maybe instead of playing a more advantageous matchup in round 2, now all of a sudden they're playing the 1 seed in round 2, right? So of course it could end up working out in their favor. It's far too early to tell the standings implications, but when you have a game in your control in this manner and you just miss free throws, and I will say AD was very upset after the game. That was as upset, top 3 most upset I've seen AD in a post-game press conference. You could barely hear what he was saying when he was answering questions. His press conference lasted about 2 minutes, which LeBron as well. Both guys, probably the 2 shortest press conferences, or respectively the shortest press conferences they've had this season in terms of a post-game availability. And LeBron blamed more of the third quarter than the missed free throws because he said it's a 48-minute game. And I think they technically lost on the free throws, but I don't necessarily disagree with LeBron. LA was outscored 29-21 and then trailed leading into the fourth and took back control of the game. But it felt like the game really flipped. LA had some momentum going into halftime. Even the beginning of the third, they had some stretches there where it looked like they hit an opening 3, got it to 10, and looked like they were maybe going to run away or at least distance themselves a bit from the Magic, and they just weren't able to do that. So yeah, I mean, I think that the third quarter, the free throws are the thing because you just got to make your free throws. That's one of the few things you can control is you can't control getting to the free throw line, but especially in a late game situation, you can control that to some extent, but you got to make your free throws. And again, to miss 4 in the final 40 seconds, that's just inexcusable no matter what. There's really no way to justify that or to kind of soften that. It's inexcusable. So missed opportunity for LA. Takeaway number 2 for me is going to be the starting lineup is probably going to stay the same. And so I asked JJ Redick pregame about Dalton Knecht and the stretch that he's been on. And it is worth noting that Dalton Knecht had 17 points, 7 for 14 shooting, hit 3 threes. So that is now 5 straight games for Dalton Knecht with 14 plus points, and 4 of the 5 he's had 17 plus. So he's been shooting the ball incredibly, playing some great offensive basketball. I thought I had some decent defensive moments tonight, but also had some moments where he was picked on, blown by, targeted, and he still continues to be a glaring defensive liability for the Lakers. But so I asked JJ pregame, essentially with the way that like he's talked about not wanting to cycle through starting lineups and that he wants to pick a starting lineup and stick with it. He made the big change, moving D'Lo to the bench, moving Cam into the starting lineup. So I just asked, like, with that context of you not wanting to cycle through lineups, with the way that Dalton has played, are you considering keeping him in the starting lineup moving forward? In potentially that being at the expense of Rui. And what JJ said was the Lakers have not made a definitive decision in either direction in terms of Dalton, but he does expect Rui to return to the starting lineup whenever he is cleared to return. Rui missed the game tonight again, as aforementioned. And so what I took that as is it's either going to remain the same starting lineup with LeBron, AD, Rui, Cam, and Austin, or there's potentially a competition there between Cam and Dalton, and maybe Dalton just stays in at the expense of Cam, and LA just really leans into the offensive end. But it sounds like as I said it after the 37-point game, I said it on the episode with Sam Vecini, which if you have not checked that out, please do so after this. But we dive into Dalton for 40 plus minutes. I said in both instances, like I think Rui is going to keep his starting spot. I don't think Rui, just because he missed a week with an ankle injury, is going to be demoted to the bench. Like that's typically not how these things work. So Rui is going to continue starting whenever he comes back. I think it sounds like it's going to be, in between Dalton and Cam. But with the way that Cam has defended, he's been their best perimeter defender over this. Like since coming back from missing a couple games, he's been their best perimeter defender again. He's looked rejuvenated and looked more like the Cam that we saw the first few games and not the last two before, while he was dealing with his injury and then ultimately missed a couple games. So if Cam continues to defend like this, I do think they probably stick with the starting lineup, the original or the second iteration starting lineup 2.0, and Dalton is just basically the sixth man and is playing like 28 to 32 minutes off the bench as a sixth man. And I think that slots D'Lo into the seventh man role, and that probably knocks out Gabe Vincent from the rotation. Max Christie played 10 more minutes, actually 11 more minutes than Gabe tonight, and he closed over Gabe and D'Lo and Cam for what that's worth. So I think Max Christie might have regained a rotation spot, and it might finally be time for Gabe Vincent, who shout out to Lakers guru, finding the stat that Gabe has more fouls than made shots this season. He's 22 fouls on the season, 16 made field goals. That's an insane stat and really highlights how, tonight he didn't even take a shot. And it's just, he's been such a negative offensively that for as good as he's been defensively, and this was a tough matchup for him. This is Magic are routinely putting out guys like 6'5" and above out there. So for a smaller guy like Gabe, that this was arguably like one of the worst matchups of the season for Gabe. But we've seen now Max and Cam, continue to play more than him. Cam obviously is a starter, Max coming off the bench. And I think if Rui returns on Saturday against Denver, you probably see the same starting lineup, and then you see Gabe phased out of the rotation. Maybe it's Max phased out of the rotation, but I think he's been better than Gabe, giving you like similar defense, maybe not quite at the Gabe level, but certainly better offensively. And I just think overall has played better. So it seems to me that Dalton, as I suspected, is probably going to be moving to the bench, or maybe they lean into this like all offense lineup. I do think that the perimeter defense is concerning if it's Austin, Dalton, Austin, Dalton, Rui, LeBron, and those are the four guys surrounding AD. That's a pretty rough defensive group out there. So maybe they're good enough to outscore opponents, but I think it's trending more toward Rui and Cam starting, and Dalton moving to the bench. But we'll see on Saturday. It sounds like Rui could be back by then, and if so, then we'll finally have our answer. And then third takeaway is going to be failing the first test. And what I mean by that is, to go back to an earlier point, like this is I would say like 5 tests for the Lakers here in this 5-game stretch. And like Denver's a huge game on Saturday. I think not only for the West standings, but also for the Lakers just psyche and confidence against this Denver team that's beaten them 12 out of 13 times. Denver's just had their number for the last 2 years, and the Lakers, like they need to conquer that dragon. They already conquered the Sacramento Kings dragon earlier in the season, but now they got to do the Denver one. And we'll see if Nikola Jokic is back. I assume he will be, because that's just what happens with the Lakers and opponents. But I mean, Lakers had 70 combined points from LeBron and AD tonight. AD 39 points, 9 rebounds, 3 blocks. LeBron was awesome. Hit 3 straight threes in the fourth. Finished with 31, 10, and 7. Also had a huge offensive rebound for a putback, and then a huge defensive rebound and outlet to AD. And I forgot that, I think that was about like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left or so. I think it was 1:17 left, but seemed like LeBron was icing the game on both ends. Had a dunk on Jonathan Isaac, had a block on Tristan da Silva. And like, I just thought LeBron brought it in a way physically where this was a taxing matchup for LeBron with facing this many bigs, this many big wings. And I thought he held up, fairly well for the most part. So yeah, this was just, again, like the Lakers, the one thing naysayers have been critiquing them on has been like, okay, you won 6 games against bad teams. Like, let's see you do it against the Orlandos and the Denvers and the Phoenixes. And so far, they lost this game. They had a blown opportunity. I think there was a lot positively to take from this. I do think it was a tough matchup given who's out and just some of the weaknesses of the Lakers roster. Like a big, long, athletic team, a very defensive-minded team, a very physical team. Like, those are the types of teams that are going to give the Lakers problems. So I do think this is a bad matchup for the Lakers. But I also think it highlights some of, like, these aren't necessarily surprises or things that we should be, like, shocked by, but certainly some of the lack of perimeter size, the lack of perimeter athleticism on this team. And Jared Vanderbilt will help that. I have actually not talked about the Vando situation, so he's going to be out at least 2 more weeks, and then we'll see at that point. This is like the 3rd time his timetable has been pushed back. The Lakers are saying it's not a setback, although it's kind of hard to say that when he was supposed to be back. The initial timetable was he'd be back opening night. Now we're over a month into the season, and there's been a lot of radio silence with the situation, and then it keeps getting pushed back. So I don't really see how that can be framed as not a setback, but apparently it's not. But I mean, Vando helps with some of this. Jackson Hayes helps with some of this. Rui can help with some of this. But the Lakers do have a smaller perimeter group and a group that can be overwhelmed with size and athleticism and length. And I think you saw that tonight. I think it really hurt them tonight. And again, it wasn't like the bigs had, Goga Batadze, Mo Wagner, like they each had 4 offensive rebounds. But I think it went beyond that where, I'm looking at it now, of the 9 Magic players that played 10 or more minutes, 8 of the 9 had at least 1 offensive rebound. And that's just what it felt like, of no matter who was matched up with who, Orlando was quicker to the ball, more physical to the ball. And I actually think the Lakers could have taken a lot more free throws in this game. They could have shot 30 plus easily, but that was this had a more playoff type, refereeing, it felt like the refs were swallowing their whistles a bit, especially on the Lakers side. And there were several times where they didn't get back in transition because they're upset about a call. And it was like, that's like, I know Jason Timpf has talked about it. Like, that's the one downside of LA being a team that relies to some extent on getting to the free throw line, is like when they don't get the calls, their transition defense is even worse. And I thought there were several possessions in tonight where it was like, a guy drives, he gets hammered, or there's at least some contact. They don't get the call, and then they're complaining and they're not getting back, and it leads to an Orlando layup, dunk, open 3. Maybe they don't even score, but it's more the process of that, of like, if you don't get the foul call, get back. you can complain as you're running back or on the next dead ball, next stoppage, but don't whine and throw your arms up and not get back in transition, especially when that's been such a weakness, such an emphasis for the team. So I would say again, like I'm not going like this stretch. I said if LA can go 3-2, I think that's a win. I still stand by that, and I will be. I love I want to monitor just how they're faring against these teams and how this stretch goes. And is it only like San Antonio is like the one win, or I just want to see how this stretch plays out in what we learn about how real some of this team's progress is. And was it just them beating up on bad teams and getting away with some of the limitations or weaknesses of the roster and just some of the bad habits that they have? Or has there been tangible progress, and can they sustain that and execute against some of the better teams? Can they beat a Denver? Can they beat a Phoenix in an NBA Cup game? Can they beat the Thunder, who will have some of their bigs back? Obviously not Chet. So that's just what I'm looking for the next week or so. And I think this is a really big week of showing us who the Lakers really are and how far they are from contending with the top of the Western Conference, because I would throw Denver and Phoenix and Oklahoma City obviously in that mix of like 3 of the top 5 teams in the West, and let's see how the Lakers fare against them. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A from tonight. I'm going to do Q&A for about 30 minutes. See, I got a couple super chats. So first one from Smokey. Thank you for the super chat. What's up, Jovan? Quick trade idea, which I hope helps our defense. Would you oppose Ochai, Bruce Brown for D'Lo and Gabe? Maybe a first. Could run Austin, Ochai, Reddish, Braun, AD with Bruce Brown, Max, Knecht, Rui, Hayes second. I would even probably start Bruce Brown, I would say there. But maybe you can then go something like you could maybe even go Bruce Brown and Dalton Knecht. I would like that. Yeah, I would do that. I've been a Bruce Brown guy. Like I think he's really valuable. Like I think the one thing with Bruce Brown is he is coming off of knee surgery. So I think if I'm the Lakers, I want to see what that looks like. I want to see like at least a few weeks of him being healthy and being productive. I think it's, especially given their recent injury luck or track record or however you want to frame it, I think trading for a guy coming off knee surgery and not at least like testing how he looks, like that would just be, that they trade for him, that he has a setback and then, or he re-injures it. And then it's just like, I think they should give it some time. Like obviously that could happen no matter what. And it's not necessarily like a Lakers specific thing, but I think anytime a guy's coming off a surgery, you want to give it some time to see what they look like once they've come back. So I think that would be the one thing with Bruce Brown. But in theory, if he can be healthy and can have a little bit of a runway into the trade deadline or into January, then I think that's certainly something that I would be interested in. Kronos, thank you for the super chat. I'm still sold, but got to improve on the margins. Flip Gabe for Jonas in December. Swing for Shaden and Matisse with deals expiring and picks by the trade deadline. That's an interesting one. I think the price for Shaden Sharp is going to be high. He strikes me as a guy who they'd probably ask for a couple of firsts. The first round market right now is like all over the place because Mikal Bridges goes for 5, right? Like that's kind of, it's really hard to then judge like what a guy like a Shaden Sharp or a Walker Kessler, or like, because I don't think there's like a 4 first round pick difference necessarily from those guys to a guy like Bridges. And that's probably a unique circumstance where Bridges is only going, that price because it's the Knicks and the Nets trading together, and the Nets were like, you really got to blow us away with your offer for us to give him to our inner city rival. So that's, again, maybe a unique circumstance, but yeah, I mean, I like it. I don't like the one thing. I think Matisse, is pretty similar to Cam. I know he's fluctuated with the shooting throughout the last few years, but like I would say like his defensive peak is higher than Cam, and he can be a better shooter than Cam. But there is some similarity there in terms of like just the limitations of like Matisse to me is that like 18 to 25 minute a night guy, depending on your rotation, depending on your needs, depending on like how he's shooting, how he's playing. Shaden I like a lot, but he's still a guard. And I think I would want a better wing, I guess, if I'm the Lakers in this type of restructuring, but I don't dislike it. Like I like where your head's at. I do think that deal probably cost the Lakers 2 first-round picks, if based on that framework. And I'll say I don't know if Shaden and Matisse would be enough for them to justify giving up 2 first-round picks. All right, let's see. Justine, Severo, even Jovan can make at worst 1 of 2 free throws. You know what? Yeah, I mean, I've never shot them with 19,000 people watching me, but yeah, I would like to hope so. Daily Meditation loves trading Austin Reeves. He says, hello, Jovan, can we trade D'Lo, Gabe, Reeves for some wings? Who'd you trade for? I'm just saying it now. Clearly, I know you I appreciate you watching, but I know you really want to trade Austin. But the one thing I will say, and I've reported this before, and it's continued to be a thing now for going on 3 seasons, of like the Lakers bar to trade Austin Reeves is very, very high. It has to basically be an all-star, like top guy. Like I don't want to put a number on it or like, whatever, but it has to be a really elite, like all-star level guy, because he just, again, you clearly are not an Austin guy, but like objectively, he's on a really good value contract. Anytime you average more points per game than your contract, and like he's making a double-digit figure contract, like Austin is outplaying his contract. And maybe you disagree with that, but like I think most people would agree Austin is on a really good team-friendly contract. And one of the few, honestly, team-friendly contracts the Lakers have. I would say most of their contracts are not team-friendly. So, like, Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, D'Lo's expiring, but like he didn't have much of a market at that price. So Austin is one of the few contracts that the Lakers have where like the production is outweighing the cost. And to give that guy up, he's been their 3rd best player this season. He's been the number 3 option outside, obviously Dalton's had this stretch the last week and a half, but like on the whole of the season, Austin's been their 3rd best guy. So if you want to insert Austin, that does put like, the bar to trade Austin is very high. So regardless of what you think, I'm just sharing that. Now D'Lo, Gabe, like, one of the first names, like, Bruce Brown comes to mind. He's more of a 2 guard, although he can play multiple positions, but like 2 guard size, he's 6'4". Either of the Nets wings, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, could you throw in a Rui or a Vando and get up to Jeremy Grant and his number? Those are like some of the guys that could be available. Ogbaji maybe in Toronto if they're just selling and he's available. But I think, again, like for Austin to be included, it's going to have to be a really, really good player. Neutro, Jovan. So if we do get DFS, then would that result in Rui going to the bench? I think it depends on the structure of the trade. Is it Gabe? Is it D'Lo? Is it both of them? And it's a little bit of a bigger trade. Is Rui in the trade, right? Like, so obviously if he's in the trade, then this question is moot. I think I could see them doing DFS and Dalton next to Austin, LeBron, and AD if, let's say, Rui's still on the team and then he becomes more the 6-man microwave guy. And then, if they're giving up D'Lo and Gabe, hypothetically, they don't have a traditional backup point guard. So that might be a position, like maybe they get Schroeder, or maybe they do a separate deal to kind of solve that backup point guard spot. But yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on the context of the rest of the roster. Do they do another trade, or maybe DFS makes more sense off the bench and they get, like, if they get Bruce Brown in DFS, maybe they start Bruce Brown and DFS comes off the bench. So I think it's hard to answer that without knowing the context of what the roster looks like at that point. But in general, I could see DFS potentially starting in place of, more so I would say, like in place of like Cam, and then Dalton going, like they use that opportunity to reshuffle the lineup, and then Dalton enters for Rui. KD, Jovan, when's their next practice? So they are not practicing tomorrow. It's a get what you need day, which is basically a practice, but we don't get to attend and talk to them. I mean, it's an optional, but like most of the time guys will, like, they're not going to scrimmage or anything, but it's guys will get in, get treatment, get shots up, maybe do some skill drill stuff. But nothing, it's not like a serious contact, it's not an official like going over stuff day. So next potential one would be Saturday. That would be shoot around, not practice technically. Otherwise they'll be off Sunday, and then the next practice would be Monday. From Bamboo Shoot, it's crazy to see all these former Lakers balling elsewhere. We had Mo Wagner. Yeah. Honestly, like I had the thought, and we were talking about it on press row, of like, imagine Mo Wagner as the Lakers backup center. Like, he would solve so many issues. Tonight had 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a block, was just incredibly effective and efficient. 7 for 13, hit a 3, got to the free throw line. He was destroying like everybody in the paint. I was kind of surprised. Like I thought Goga had, I mean, technically, like Goga's better defensively than Mo, but I thought Mo had some really good minutes for Orlando tonight. DJ, Jovan, love your show, bro. Thank you. I appreciate you. Would you be interested in a trio of Trey Mann, Caleb Martin, and Nick Richards from the Hornets? What would you give up? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I don't know the salaries off the top of my head. Let me pull up Spot Track. Let's see here. Hornets. So those guys are making, Cody's making 8. Nick's making 5. Trey's making 4.9. So basically 5. So that's about 18 combined $1 million. So you could do something like D'Lo and a first. Now, because the Lakers have a roster crunch, they have 15 guys. Like they would have to probably put 2 more guys in the deal, and that maybe complicates it. Where, like I guess you could do Gabe plus 2, Gabe plus Christian Wood plus Jalen Hood-Schifino or something like that. Maybe with a first. I don't. It's tricky. Like I like the package. I don't know if I'd give up a first, to be honest. Maybe like a lottery protected first at most. Again, it's a weird trade market right now, and it's. I mean, I like all these guys individually. I think it could be a nice like reshuffling of the bench, and maybe. Caleb, I think, could really help. Nick Richards as like a backup center, and I like Trey Mann. I think I don't know if they give up a first for this, to be honest. Mike M, yo, I still think we need a big. Why not go after Vooch from the Bulls? The only reason I would say my big concern with Vooch from, and I've said this before, he's a USC guy. I went to school with him, so he's my dude. But just the defense, I think he's gotten better defensively, but I would still say he's a below average defensive center, a below average rim protector, and he's a good rebounder. He's obviously incredibly skilled and talented offensively, and can get you. I mean, he's been a walking double-double from Orlando, started in Philly, into Orlando, into Chicago. So like he puts up big numbers, but it's kind of similar to me to Jonas Valanciunas. Like he's better than Jonas Valanciunas. I think I'd rather have him than Jonas Valanciunas. Like that's been the popular guy that's been attached to the Lakers because he was on LeBron's list. And there is some interest there, to be clear, but I think Nikola Vucevic is a much better player. And I guess if you're going to go with that like offensive minded skill center, I'd rather have the guy who's like the better passer, dribble handoff guy, better shooter, just better scorer overall. And I would say better rebounder, probably kind of similar, but I would lean Vooch. I think the defense is the thing. And like maybe in a backup role, if you don't have to give up a first and you could swing it and just have him as like a backup 5 who maybe plays like 24 to 26 minutes a night and 6 to 10 of those minutes are next to AD, like that's probably fine. But if you're giving up a first and you're really investing in like restructuring your team, I think the center needs to be better defensively than Vooch is. Henry Kellen, hey Jovan, how many minutes do you think Dalton will get once Rui is back? He played the most tonight with 39. Yeah, I think like they've been taking advantage of Dalton being young and having young legs. I think I could see it. It depends if I think it does depend to some extent on if he remains a starter or a bench player, because JJ did say that, and this is what made me think he's probably coming off the bench, is like, he's like, as a coaching staff, we have to do a better job of, because part of my question was like, because he's had this success as a starter, like, do you think, have you learned anything or can you unlock him still off the bench? And the part of that he responded to was like, as a coaching staff, we have to find ways to keep Dalton on the floor for longer if he is coming off the bench. So I could see, I could see high 20s, like 28 to 30 minutes a night off the bench, maybe 30 to 32 as a starter. But I think his minutes are going to come down, because if you look at it now, like, I mean, you could say, I guess, like, cut Max's, like, there's a ripple effect, right? So let's say Dalton moves to the bench, Rui starts. Rui tonight plays 30, 32 minutes. So you shave off like 7 to 9 minutes from Dalton's total. That's available. That goes to Dalton. And then you shave off another 6 to 8 from Max. And so that's another, let's just say 15 to 17 minutes. And then you cut Gabe's 14 entirely. Gabe's out of the rotation now. So that's like 28, 29 minutes. So I think that's realistic, is Gabe or Max is out. One of those guys has their minutes slashed, and Rui has obviously, like, that starting spot has their minutes slashed. And then, so I would say high 20s for Dalton. Ryan, I don't think our biggest need is a big, to be honest. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Their biggest need is a two-way, I would say a two-way big wing, and then second would be a two-way smaller wing / like shooting guard. But the Lakers just don't have enough two-way perimeter players. Like, if we go down the list, Cam Reddish leans much more defensive than offensive. Dalton Knecht, much more offensive. Austin, I think, is a little bit more balanced, but more offensive. Max Christie, more defensive. He was supposed to be like the guy that's closest to two-way, but that has not been the case so far. D'Lo, much more offensive. Gabe Vincent, much more defensive. And then that's it with like the perimeter guys. So they just have too many one-way guys, and they constantly have to try and like balance it with that 3-man combination between like the 1 and the 3. And I think if you can flip a couple of these guys for better two-way guys, you just have more versatility and flexibility and just better two-way lineups in general, depending on who the guy or two you bring in are. So certainly I agree. Matt Stringer, is Jokic playing against the Lakers? As of now, it's not clear, but I would assume so. Okay, I see some super chats, so I'll get onto those. Super chat from Dylan Spreen. Jovan, opinion on Rui Max plus 31 first for Cam Johnson. That to me is a lot. Oh, so first of all, every team's going to be asking for the 29. Teams are going to want the more recent pick. So like I think if the Lakers are only trading one or they haven't traded the 29 yet, I think that's going to be the one that people are asking for. So I would say the 29 would be the one here. I think that might be too much for Cam Johnson. If you take out Rui and put in Gabe, and I'm not quite sure if the math still works. I think it would, or would be kind of similar. Maybe it's Gabe and JHS or whatever. I would be more open to that. I've said I'm still holding my max stock. I don't want to give up on max, but like for a guy like Cam Johnson with the win now situation, I'd be more open to it. But I don't think for as good as Cam Johnson has been, and I do think he's been better than Rui, I don't think he's worth max and a first round pick personally. So that's my opinion. And thank you again, Dylan. BLC, Jovan, if everyone is healthy, do you think they could win it all? Yes, but I think there's so much that has to go right for the Lakers. Like I talked about it on Sean Davis's show. I probably give them, like, entering the season, we did a season preview, and he was saying like 0.5 to 1%, and I was like, sure, I guess I could see that, and maybe after the beginning of the season, I nudged that up to like 2%, maybe a little bit above 2%. But I would say that's still about right. Like I could see out of 100 scenarios of how the season goes, there's a few that the Lakers could potentially win it all. But I would feel much better about that if they make the right move. If they got a Cam Johnson, a Dorian Finney-Smith, a Bruce Brown, a Walker Kessler, like one of these impact rotation guys, I think that would up that confidence where like I think the West is relatively wide open. Like OKC's really, really good. I think they could win 60 games this year, even with Chet being out. Like that's going to be a really tough team. But outside of that, in Denver with Jokic, you can never count them out. They've also been a tough matchup for the Lakers, obviously. But outside of those two teams, with LA specifically, Minnesota, Dallas, the Suns, they've matched up well with those teams over the last couple of years. And then Golden State just lost Melton. That's also been a good matchup for LA. So like, I don't think there's anyone they should necessarily be like fearing outside of OKC and maybe Denver. And again, Denver's as of now based more on like the past than the present, but I think it's right there. Now Boston is a different monster. If Boston's healthy, I think they're the best team in the league and will likely win the title. But if you're Lakers, at least you want to get to the finals, right? And then give yourself a shot and see if you could beat Boston. So I think they have a shot, but a lot of like LeBron and AD have to stay healthy for 70 plus games. Really, Austin has to stay, like the principal guys have to, Dalton, Austin have to stay healthy. Rui has to get healthy soon. Vando has to come back at some point. I think Christian Wood probably has to come back at some point. If we're talking about like this current roster, I could see a scenario, but it's very unlikely. Again, I'm giving it maybe like a few percentage chance at most. But if they make the right move or two, I do think they have a legitimate chance. Next one from Kronos. Thank you again. Math works on D'Lo, Gabe Wood for DFS, Dayron. That's Dayron Sharp and Dennis Schroeder. I would love that. I actually think you hit all three. Like you do bring in a better backup point guard. Dennis has been better than Gabe this year. You add the wing in DFS, and then you add a better backup five in Dayron. I like Dayron Sharp. So yeah, I really like that deal. I don't know if I throw in a fur. I mean, a fur's that's tough. I guess maybe a lottery protected first. MMA Esteban, we have nobody who can guard MPJ from three. He averaged 25 against us last year. Yeah, I mean, they've never had anyone who could guard MPJ. He always torches them. Puppy Chow 302. Do you think the Lakers backcourt can outshoot the Celtics backcourt from the 3-point line? Is that the way to beat them? If we're talking like Derek White and Drew Holiday versus Dalton Knecht and Austin Reeves, I think the Lakers can win that battle in terms of 3-point shooting. Obviously, from like who are the better players, who are the better two-way players, who are the better impact players, like I would take the Boston backcourt over LA's backcourt. So I think there's an element of that, of like you're going to need to make probably 15 plus threes to have a chance at beating Boston on like even an average to like good night for them. If it's a great night, they're hitting 20 plus threes and like they're just really tough to beat. They have some of the best two-way players or like the best two-way combinations in the league. But I think Austin, if we're saying like Austin and Dalton or Austin and D'Lo, Dalton and D'Lo, like some combination of those three, I think they can outshoot the Celtics backcourt. But Boston has just much better defenders. I mean, we're not even talking about Tatum and Brown and you know they can. Porzingis is still out, but like Boston's the best team in the league in my opinion still. Britain, who would be your number one trade target, Jovan? That's a good question. I would say of all of the available players, I don't know. It's tough. Like, I'm going to kind of contradict myself here and say of all the available guys or guys who theoretically could be available, the one who I like the most is probably Walker Kessler, in part because he's only 23. He's got a couple years left on his deal. He's on a rookie contract, and I think he could be the long-term. I made the Ivica Zubac comparison, not necessarily based on their game, although I do think there are some similarities there, but also like just, you know, Zubac has been the Clippers starting center now for going on, 5 years or 5-6 years. And he's just a really solid, like not a top 10 guy, but it's just been a really solid around league average. And even this year has been better than that center but like really reliable and just trustworthy. And I think just gives you a certain level of success at the center position that I think Walker Kessler could have that type of career. So I would say Walker Kessler because I like him for longer term as well as shorter term. But among the other names, Bruce Brown, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith. I think I'm higher on Jeremy Grant than most. I think Jeremy Grant, as long as you can kind of get a sense of like, is he willing to buy into the role he would have and play defense again and box out and like do the little stuff the Lakers are going to need him to do. If he's willing to do that, I think Jeremy Grant could also might be the highest upside guy they potentially could acquire. I'm not as high on Zach LaVine. I'm not as high on Jonas Valanciunas, Vooch. Some of the offensive-minded guys who don't play defense, that's just not my cup of tea personally, but it's also not what I think the Lakers need, especially because some of those guys, Zach LaVine is going to cost you 3 to 4 guys, including at least 2 rotation guys, if not 3. And then you're losing depth and you're getting worse defensively. And just especially if you're going like Austin, Dalton, and Zach, the defense there is horrible. So I'm a little bit more skeptical of like a LaVine fit. See a super chat from Harry Chinani. Thank you for the super chat. What do you think of getting rid of conferences for the NBA Cup so that the West and East teams could play each other in group play? I think that would be fun. I think that's a good idea. I think because right now it is very lopsided based on the two conferences. Like the West, each West group has at least like 3 good teams, if not 4 or 5. And the East groups, it's like some of them have 1 or 2, and it's just like the way that it's structured. So I would like to see it. I'm with you. Like now, the tough part is it is sort of they're trying to keep it within like the normal flow of the schedule. So it's a little bit easier to do that West and West and East and East. So you're not saying like, because even now like the Lakers, I mean they did play Orlando, they played Cleveland, like Detroit. They have played some Eastern Conference teams, but it has been a more West heavy schedule. Same for most East teams. So that's like the one complicating factor. But I like that. Like they're getting weird stuff. All-Star game with now the 4 teams of 8, and like I like the innovation, and I think moving now. Granted, I think they almost view this as like a mini playoffs, and then you have an East versus West team in the championship. So that's the one thing where it's almost like a mini playoff run into like a finals or whatever. But yeah, like I think I like it. I'm going to go about 5 more minutes here, and then I'm going to call it. So if you guys have questions for me, get them in now. Razo99, much love from Brazil. Thank you for watching from Brazil. I have no idea what time it is there, but I assume it's an odd hour, and I appreciate you watching. And shout out to all of the Brazilian Laker fans and Brazilian listeners. Avulso, Jovan, the Blazers aren't dealing with us. Jeremy Grant ain't coming. I think if Lakers gave up 2 first-round picks for him, they could get him, but I also don't think he's worth that. So I get why they wouldn't do that. So yeah, I mean, you're probably right, but teams get like, if I'm Portland, I should be trading him by the deadline. Dark Galaxy, why did JJ play AR and D'Lo together for nearly the whole 4th quarter? That was, I was a little surprised by the rotation in the 4th quarter. I like Max closing over Cam. I think Cam's better defensively. I think it was kind of trying to bring a little bit more 2-way balance, although I think Cam had 8 rebounds tonight, 8 points. He 3 for 4, hit a couple threes. Like, I probably would have gone Cam over Max, and that's coming from a guy who's, I've clearly been, higher on Max than most, and higher on him than Cam. But the D'Lo minutes, to me, like, I feel like JJ's been trying to pump up D'Lo and give him a lot of positive, like, confirmation for accepting the bench role, and look, like, I think D'Lo's done a really good job still playmaking off the bench and has been an effective passer and playmaker. But tonight, 3 for 10, 1 for 7 on threes. He was getting booed. I don't know if you guys could pick that up on TV, or maybe some of you were at the game, but his last 2 3-point misses in the 4th quarter, they were like relatively faint. So I'm not saying like the whole arena was booing him, but you could hear from where we were sitting in press row, boos and people upset with D'Lo for his shooting performance. He had 3 air balls in this game, which was just some way off misses, and then he would trot back defensively. He did have a big steal, I will say, late in the 4th quarter that was helped the Lakers, kind of stay ahead until they missed the free throws. But I thought like this was a pretty harmful D'Lo game, and I didn't really understand why he was playing as much as he did. I think they have been trying to keep him around that like 20, 22 minute mark. Tonight he played 23, but I didn't really get especially in this matchup. Like, he struggles against size and athleticism and length. I didn't really understand it, and he did struggle tonight. So that was a weird one, to be honest. I don't have an answer for you, but my guess would be like, I mean, it was between D'Lo or Max or Gabe or Cam, right? So in theory, D'Lo's the better player of those 4, but I would have gone Cam. And then if I was going to go with a different guy, I would have gone Max. Dylan Spreen, D'Lo for Lonzo swap. He brings playmaking and defense. Yeah, so the one thing I've said with Lonzo is similar to Bruce Brown, where just given his injury history, I'd want to see a sustained stretch of him healthy and him performing at a certain level before making a trade like that. But and what's Lonzo's contract situation? Let's pull it up here, because he's making 21.4, and then he's an unrestricted free agent going into the summer. So it could work. Now, the one thing is you'd have to throw in an extra contract you probably have to throw in JHS or Christian Wood or something to match, because the Lakers can't take back more salary in a trade because of the first apron. But yeah, I'm open to that if Lonzo looks more like himself, but I don't. Again, you gotta you gotta like you don't want to trade for an injured player. That's one. Okay, I see you, Lego Tortoise Builder. What I will say with Lego Tortoise Builder is you love to build complex trades. I've noticed that with you. You are big on the multi-team trades. D'Lo, Gabe, Max, Hayes, Hood plus picks for Bruce Brown, Bones Highland, Robert Williams, Kessler. Sure. I mean, if you could pull that off, I would do that. I mean, you're getting to a center to potentially start, a center to come off the bench. You have Robert Williams insurance with Kessler, so you don't need, like, if he can't stay healthy. Bones Highland, I'm not the biggest fan of, but whatever. You're losing, like, he could be a ninth man, I guess, maybe. Bruce Brown, I obviously like. So you're saying it works? Okay. Then he's saying that the math works. So if that's the case, I like it. I'm not going to pretend to or try to say your name because I don't want to butcher it, but I will call you XL. What are your thoughts on the Lakers defending the cup? I think it's admirable from the sense of like just the competitive spirit and like nature of it. I think you want a group to be competitive and rallying around something, and it's cool that they haven't lost the game yet. And if they could somehow go undefeated again for a second straight year, that would be awesome. And I think that would speak to this group's ability to play better in high stakes moments, which I've talked about, a few times. The one thing is like, you don't want to overexert yourself. And, I look at Denver, for example, last year, like was really trying to get the one seed. They end up not getting the one seed. And they were playing their guys heavy minutes deep into the season when they could have been resting them and kind of just getting into, rejuvenating for the playoffs. And instead they were going hard and end up not getting the one seed because of that Spurs loss, but then also being tired entering the playoffs and having this trickle down effect into the Lakers series and then the Timberwolves series, and they lose in game 7, blow a big first half lead. So I think for the Lakers, you on a smaller scale, you saw that last year with the NBA Cup and how things went in December. But so could that happen again? I guess in theory, like, yeah. But I think playing like playoff atmosphere type games, it just like that, I think it's good for you. And I think it's kind of like an iron sharpens iron type thing. But at the same time, I don't think the Lakers should like overexert themselves to win or play guys like 42, 44 minutes or whatever to try and win one of the cup games. Just because I think ultimately the 83rd game doesn't count. The stats don't count. It doesn't count on your record. It's just an extra game. And even the games that do count, like, you want to win them, but I don't think you should necessarily treat them differently than like a regular season game where it's like tonight you're not going to play a guy more than like 38, 39 minutes. There's a limit there because it's the regular season. You're keeping a big picture perspective. So as long as they keep a big picture perspective, like if they win the cup, if they win the rest of their games, obviously they'll take that, right? Like you take wins when you could get them, but I don't think they should necessarily overexert themselves or go out of their way to try and win it, just because we saw last year, both them and the Pacers had a significant hangover that affected the next like couple weeks. And for the Lakers, really put them in this weird spot where then they were trying the all wing lineups and they're benching Austin and D'Lo and Rui. And it's just overthinking everything because of that post NBA Cup hangover. So I would avoid that if I were them. But obviously you want to win every game. So if you can win every game, you do it, but it's got to be within reason and like keeping the big picture in mind with everything. Okay, I hit the 1 hour mark, so I'm going to be doing let's see, two, I'll say 3 more. MJ, Lakers need athletes, winger, big, but these dudes getting cooked in the perimeter is not going to go well in the playoffs. I'm with you. Lakers need an infusion of athleticism. I think athleticism, size, length, I see a super chat here from EJ. Thank you for the super chat. Rui, Vando, Gabe, D'Lo out, Levine, DFS in, or Grant DFS plus cheaper backup big for all the above as well. Money works. Thoughts. I don't like the first trade as much. I've already said I'm not a big Levine guy, so I guess you create a couple roster spots. Like I'd be interested to see what they can do with that in terms of buyout guys, or I don't even think they could get a buyout guy because the first apron, but or it depends on how much they were making before. But free agents or buyout guys that they are able to sign, that would be interesting. I do like the second one better. If you could get Grant DFS and a backup big, maybe it's Dayron Sharp or something like that. I like that one a lot more because you're adding size, length, athleticism, defense. I like that second one a lot. Okay. See some arguing about Reeves in the chat, and then it looks like another super chat from EJ. Okay, thank you. We will get out of here on this. One more. Has there been accountability for the Russ trade disaster? Dave Mick, I assume you're saying McMenamin, it said LBJ took a little between that, Crusoe botch, THT, Faith. Would a less mom and pop shop have cleaned house in the front office? Well, you are ending this on with a stick of dynamite, right? My understanding is yes. I think there's been accountability for the Russ trade. I also think there's been some finger pointing from all sides. There's several parties involved, several parties to blame. Obviously, the Stars were involved with it, but the front office and ownership ultimately signed off on it and executed the trade. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around for the Russ situation. And I think everyone's done a combination of taking accountability, but also finger pointing and saying, well, this person wanted it, but then this person did it. And it's kind of that he said, she said, or finger pointing, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because I think like the thing that gets lost in the Pelinka conversation, and by no means am I saying he's perfect, but like they won a championship with him. And whether it's a coach or a front office, it obviously, interestingly enough, like the Lakers did not retain their championship coach for beyond an additional, or I guess he coached 2 more years. But like, I think winning a championship as a front office person, obviously it wasn't like he helped build the team with Magic, but he did make several of the moves that helped, the prior offseason, helped them win the title, including trading for Anthony Davis. Like that, I mean, he's got for if we want to like be fair and we want to put the Russ trade on his resume and the Caruso situation, and even whatever any other criticism and certainly the Lakers have done a lot of stuff wrong. I mean, JHS, right? We could throw JHS on there too. You also have to say he traded for Anthony Davis and they won a championship and they made the conference finals another season. So I'm not by any means saying Rob is perfect, and there's certainly been a lot they've done wrong and a lot that could be better. But I will say, like, when we're having the conversation, it tends to focus more on like what has gone wrong or what he hasn't done, and not as much like they won a championship. And again, I think there's a lot, like largely that was because LeBron and AD and some of the stuff that they'd done previously with Magic there as well. But I think that's just a part of it. And he's got tied to Kobe, and I think that's a factor as well. So I think there's a lot that goes into it, but I think maybe if they don't get to the conference finals in 2023, we're having a different conversation now, and maybe there is a different front office person leading the team, or maybe they bring someone in above him, or maybe he's not there. But they have had 2 deep playoff runs under him, including winning a championship. And there's a lot of really well-regarded front office people who have not won a championship that continue to be employed and continue to be looked at in a favorable light. And maybe on balance, those people are batting a higher percentage in terms of their moves, but I think the results are the results. And again, he won a championship, and that also buys you a certain level of security for now. How long will that security last? I'm not quite sure, but as I've reported in the past, and to my knowledge continues to be the case, like, he has a really good relationship with Genie. He's in good standing, and there's no plans to move on or restructure that. So I think he's the person for the time being. And again, I just think if we're going to talk about the misses, we should talk about the hits as well. Austin Reeves, you could throw into there. And like, there's been hits over the last, and part of that scouting, of course, right? But this is a complicated question, so I'm trying to give you a nuanced answer here. But I hear you. I think there's certainly plenty to criticize and have issue with, but I also think there's a certain level of, there's been results, and that, again, it maybe, and I know the fan base wants more. And look, I would also say one thing I've been critical of is, like, I think they should make a move, and if they don't make a move this year, that to me is another thing worth criticizing. And maybe we have a different conversation next summer. But I think with what they've shown, they should make a move, should invest in this group. And if they don't, then I think that's something also worth criticizing. But on that note, with that stick of dynamite, I'm going to end tonight's show. But as a reminder, I will be going live on Friday, November 22nd at 5 p.m. I put up a poll for you guys to vote on. Friday at 5 won by over 50% of the vote. So I will be going live at 5 p.m. I'll probably go live for about hour and a half, maybe 2 hours tops. But we'll be looking forward to that. And we won't be going into game specific stuff, so we can talk whatever you guys want to talk about. But for those who did not get a question in, or if I missed your question, please tune in for that if you can, and would love to answer your question then. But that will do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I will talk to you in, let's say, 16 hours or so. So be on the lookout for that. Tune in for the stream, and I will talk to you then.